in the heart of the Apini community, where ancient trees share stories with the wind, a tale unfolds, a story of a great king who, in the pursuit of justice, was exiled from the lands he vowed to protect. The story of Togbui Anku Dagadu III, the ever king who was exiled by the Germans. Before colonization of the African continent by several European nations, governance was in the hands of chiefs and kings of various ethnic groups. By the end of the 19th century, the Gold Coast had fallen under the colonial rule of the British, while Togo to the east fell under German rule. And it was during this time of colonial rule that the most influential king of ever land was exiled to Cameroon while under the German administration. Anku was the youngest son of Togbui Dagadu Agbeteti. He was installed on 1st May 1898 under the name Fia Dagadu Anku III to succeed his older brother to become the paramount chief of the Apini people of Pando. After the performance of the funeral rites of his brother, the German administration officially recognized King Dagadu III as the King of Togoland, paying him a monthly salary of £5 Around the year 1910, there was an outbreak of a strange disease that was spreading throughout Togoland. Many people thought the disease was sleeping sickness. Due to this outbreak, a law had been passed for doctors to go around the entire country to examine the symptoms of both the young and the old. German doctors were brought in to examine people for treatment. An isolation camp was set up at Palime, present-day Togo, where all those suffering from the disease or were suspected to have contracted the illness were sent for a compulsory vaccination. Now, the strange thing about this was that all the people that were sent to the camp were strong ever men, most of who eventually died after the vaccination. It was suspected that the Germans were using the lives of these strong ever men for their experiments. Due to this, in 1912, King Dagadu led a delegation to Lome to order the governor, Mr. Adolf Herzog von Mecklenburg, to stop the experimental vaccination that was killing the young men in Togoland. The governor had no choice but to immediately withdraw the law that had introduced this compulsory vaccination. This change made King Dagadu's popularity and influence grow vastly due to this action, and the German administration felt severely threatened. King Dagadu became more critical and opposed of government policies he felt were not in the interest of his people. Before the outbreak of World War I, the German government became very suspicious and more afraid of the king. He was subsequently considered a threat and an obstruction to their rule. He did everything in his power, short of open defiance, to oppose government policy. It was also believed that he had made attempts to invite the Gold Coast government to take interest in Western Togoland. On 8 January 1914, he was charged with sedition against Kaiser Wilhelm II, the then Emperor of Germany. He was taken to exile in Douala, Cameroon on 13 March 1914 on a German merchant ship, accompanied by his wife, cousins, and nephew, and also several servants. Soon after the departure of King Dagadu, the commissioner, Dr. Grunner, entered the king's palace, looted and seized a number of items including artifacts, ornaments, and royal paraphernalia, as well as the cherished and revered ivory horn of the state. Some documents and other properties were also burnt. The king arrived in Cameroon days later and was taken to the police headquarters, where he was later locked up in prison, while his entourage were kept at the police barracks. He was sent to an isolated part of the prison where murderers, armed robbers, and notorious prisoners were kept. A group of prisoners were engaged to stage what could be called a mutiny, during which King Dagadu would be killed. Fortunately for him, one of the prisoners had secretly taken a broken spear to the king in his cell and warned him about the impending attack. This made him very vigilant, and he was prepared to defend himself. On April 11, 1914, the mutiny was staged. The king was attacked, and in the ensuing fight, he managed to kill one of his attackers while the rest fled. The following morning, a trial was quickly arranged, and the king was brought before Judge Rudolf Dick, charged with killing one of the men who had attacked him the previous night. The judge, however, freed him on his plea of self-defense and asked that he should be taken out of the prison to live with his family at the barracks. On 27th of September that same year, British troops from the Gold Coast Regiment had defeated the German army in Cameroon, and the king was freed by the British forces. King Dagadu Anku and his entourage left Cameroon on 9th of January 1915 on board the same ship that had transported them to Cameroon the year before, arriving a week later at Lome. He returned to Pando, his hometown, to a hero's welcome, the largest welcoming gathering ever seen at the time. He was met by delegations from all over Togoland. King Dagadu Anku decided to thank the British government to show his appreciation to them for returning him home by contributing to the war effort. Thus he sent help to the government in the form of cash and men. In total, Togbui Dagadu contributed £300 towards the execution of the First World War, and also he sent 250 men to the British government who were sent to Cameroon to help the Allied forces as porters on the battlefield. After the war and his return from exile, the king ruled for another 10 years until his death in 1925. It is undeniable that he left a big impact not only on his people but also on the Gold Coast government. The Apini people of Pando continue to celebrate his return from exile every year till this date.